All right, 4 years ago, Sarah Vermunt had a breakdown in a Starbucks. She was in the middle of her PhD, she was working as a professor, but she was miserable. So the next day, she quit. And ever since then has devoted her life to helping unhappy people do the same. In her book, Careergasm, Find Your Way to Feel Good Work, Sarah Vermunt has poured her tips and herself into helping us all find joy in our jobs. And she's our guest here on Your Morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so none of us are going to be consumers of the book. We're all very happy here where we work, but there are a lot of people out here. First of all, how'd you come up with the term careergasm?
Well, I was trying to think of how to combine the world of work to something that felt good, and what could feel more good than a careergasm?
Okay, tell us what it means.
A careergasm is basically when your work feels good. And I think that your relationship with your work should be the same as the rest of your relationships in your life, and that it should feel good most of the time.
All right, you've got some great ways for highlighting maybe if you are not in the right spot. And it's not just a case of the Monday morning blahs. It's not the end of the weekend. It's something a little deeper than that.
Yeah, so everybody loves their weekend. I know I love my weekends. But there are some people who get this existential dread when they're getting ready for another week of work. And some people even get like physical symptoms, like maybe extreme exhaustion, or they get an illness or an injury because their work is so stressful. So that can be a really good cue that something is not going right in your career.
I often hear people say, you know, I just don't know what else I would do. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people out there who feel really lost. And sometimes that really is the true problem. And sometimes the problem is that you're actually not wanting to admit what you want to do instead, because sometimes it's really hard to admit what you want.
How do you tell the difference?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think you have to start with thinking about what kind of ingredients you want in your career. Sometimes it's really hard to nail the exact job title you want, but usually you know what kind of ingredients you want in your career and what stuff you want to leave out of your career. And so that's a good place to start.
How do people know that it's not just a bad patch and this is actually a career that I need to leave?
Yeah, really good question. If you're having just a patch or a bad day or a bad week, that's one thing. But if you're consistently feeling bad about your work, or you're feeling really exhausted at the end of the day, or dreading having to get up in the morning consistently every day, that's a signal that there's something wrong.
All right, you warn against social media. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, social media is very shiny, right? And so here we are all looking at everybody else's lives and careers, and everything looks super sexy and super amazing, but those are the highlights that we're looking at for people. So I think it's really important to look at the realistic picture of work and talk to people in real life to see what their work is actually like, not just the highlights.
You know, you bring up a really good point. Is work supposed to always feel like a careergasm? Isn't it supposed to be just work?
Yeah, so there's a reason we get paid, and it's because it's an exchange, right? So it's not going to feel good all of the time, not rainbows and sunshine every single minute of every single day, but it should feel mostly good.
Satisfying.
Yes, absolutely.
Why is looking back so important?
So we're so focused on the next thing that's coming up for us usually that we forget to look back and remember what we used to love, also the little clues about things that drive us crazy that maybe we want to avoid in the future. So looking at your past careers and past jobs can give you really helpful clues for what you should start looking for as you move forward.
Sometimes people are afraid to take the next step, to leave what they know, even if it doesn't make them happy. But what's the difference between good fear and bad fear?
Okay. So good fear is when your fear is paired with a little bit of anticipation. And bad fear is when your fear is paired with aversion. It's kind of like you have a physical reaction, you don't want to move towards something. But the positive fear that's paired with anticipation, it's kind of like that feeling you might have had when you were a kid where you're riding your bike for the first time or going down a toboggan where you're kind of like scared but also excited.
Right, nervous-sighted, my daughter calls that.
Yes, nervous-sighted or scared-sighted is another word that people use. So it should be a little bit scary but also exciting.
Why is it important to talk your ideas out? You know, if you're trying to brainstorm and think, okay, what do I want to do that I love? You use this analogy of presenting your ideas al dente. I think this is a great idea. Explain that more for us.
Yeah, so putting your ideas out into the world before they're fully cooked, al dente, is a really important thing to do. Because I know I, personally, am a bit of a perfectionist, I'm a bit of a control freak. I would rather have all my ducks in a row before I put anything out there. But if I did that, I would never actually start anything or try anything. And I think that's the case for most of us. We're never really feel ready, so it's important to put your work out into the world even before you feel ready. Otherwise, you'll never do it.
Have you found in doing your research that this is a generational thing, that there's a younger generation of people who are more willing to leave something that makes them unhappy than maybe an older generation?
Yes and no. There's a lot of people who are, I think, have higher standards for what they want. But there are also so many older people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, who've had long careers doing work they didn't love, and they are just fed up, and they're ready for some changes too.
All right, well, if you are ready for a change, make sure that you grab a copy of Careergasm. You can start feeling good about your work and where you're heading every day. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
It's a fun read.